Go on back. Pa don't sign things.
I'd take water before I walk back.
Woman with a mid-alto, warm, measured voice replies.
Swain's after my quarter. $80 for land I paid $300 for.
80's a fair price for scrub.
A thief's price for grass.
I won't sell it, I'll lease it.
By the acre?
My father's man cost me too much.
By the head. $1.25 for what fattens.
Run the sum.
I'll wait.
They laughed at the Grange Hall and crossed timbers before Hattie had the mud off her boots. It was a joke, the whole errand, and every man leaning on the long pine table knew it. They meant to send the wide, quiet farm girl up the north road, up to a rancher gone to stone since he buried his wife. Let her beg him for the road easement the town wanted. He'd never granted a soul a kindness since Amelia died, and he surely wouldn't grant one to her. She folded her apron slow, tucked it into her basket, and did not give them the satisfaction of a flushed face. What none of them guessed, warming their hands and their cruelty, was that the grieving man would refuse to let her leave at all. Her own father had handed her over to the errand, the way he handed over a heifer that wouldn't fatten. He'd said it plain at the breakfast table, not unkind, only tired. There was no room for a grown daughter who'd come home from a marriage with nothing to show. Somebody ought to make her useful. When Elder Swain's men needed a body to send up the hill and be laughed at, her father had offered her name before the coffee cooled. Hattie had heard him do it through the thin wall. She had washed the single plate, dried it, set it square on the shelf, and said not one word. She was not a woman men looked at twice, and she had made a kind of peace with that. Broad through the shoulder and the hip, strong as a mule, and about as celebrated for it. But she carried a thing the men at the table did not. She could look at a field, a herd, a ledger, and know to the penny what it was worth and what it owed. She had kept her husband's books before he hired a man to keep them from her. Numbers had never once lied to her. People did that. So she walked the north road with her basket and her sums, and she let them laugh at her back the whole first mile. The crossed timbers stood bare that early spring, and yet not bare. The blackjack oaks along the fence line still wore their dead leaves, rust brown and curled, clinging where every other tree had let go months before. It unsettled folks who didn't know the tree, all that dead cloth refusing to drop. Hattie knew it. Some things held on past their season, she thought, and it wasn't stubbornness, and it wasn't sickness. It was only the way they were made. She walked under them, with the leaves whispering dry above her, and the little blue stem in the ditch caught the low sun and ran silver, mile on mile, like water that had learned to stand still. The Hollis Ranch sat where the road quit trying. A low house, a good barn, a windmill turning slow. She climbed the porch steps, and the third board groaned under her weight. A long complaining note, and a boy of maybe 6 looked up from the corner where he'd been digging at a knothole with a nail. He didn't run. He studied her, the way children study weather. Behind him, a girl a few years older stood in the doorway with a dish towel twisted in both hands, and her face was the closed face of a child who has learned that grown women leave. "You the one my grandfather sent," the girl said. "Not a question. You can go on back. Pa don't sign things." "I didn't come to make him sign anything," Hattie said. "I came because they told me to, and because I've walked a long way, and I'd take a drink of water before I walk back." That was when Hollis came around the corner of the house, with a coil of rope over his shoulder, and the look of a man who'd been listening. He was tall and gone gray early at the temples, and there was a rope-burned scar shining pale across the heel of his right hand, an old one, the kind a man earns choosing to hold a line he should have let run. He set the coil down on the rail. He looked at her, the way you'd look at a bill you hadn't ordered. "Water's at the pump," he said. "Then you can tell the town I said no, and we'll both be spared the second trip." She drank. She wiped her mouth on the back of her wrist, plain as a field hand, and she did not thank him prettily or beg. She said, "The town wants your easement." "I don't care about the town's easement. I've got my own trouble, and I expect you've heard it." since a man like Swain doesn't keep a thing quiet if it profits him to talk. She watched his jaw. He's after my quarter section. He sent a man to offer me $80 for land I paid $300 for. I'd rather you laughed in my face than him. At least you'd mean it. Something in Hollis shifted, small, like a door not opening but ceasing to be barred. "80's a fair price for scrub," he said, testing her. "It's a thief's price for grass," she answered. "And you know the difference, or you wouldn't run cattle. My south quarter carries little blue stem and switched to a man's waist by July. I don't want to sell it, I want to lease it." She set her basket down on the groaning board and folded her hands over her middle. "A grazing lease. My south quarter, bounded at the creek and the section line, no farther. Priced by the head, not by the acre. So you pay for what you graze and not a blade more. 3 years and done, no renewal writ in. So neither of us is fool enough to be bound past our own good sense." He was quiet a long moment. The windmill ticked. "My father's man priced my winter grass last fall," he said slowly. "By the acre, I paid too much, and half of it was rock." "Then your father's man is either a fool, or he loves your father more than he loves your money," Hattie said. "By the head, you pay $1.25 a season for what fattens, and nothing for what doesn't. Run the sum yourself. I'll wait." He ran it. She watched him run it, watched his lips move once and stop, and she saw the exact moment the numbers beat him, because the numbers were better than his own man's, and he was too honest with himself to pretend otherwise. He went inside without a word and came back with a pot of ink and a paper, and he wrote the terms in a square, careful hand, while she read each line over his shoulder and made him change the word renewable to nothing at all. He signed. She signed under him. The girl in the doorway watched her father put his name to a thing a stranger had talked him into, and her twisted dish towel went still. "You'll want to walk your line before the cattle do," Hollis said, not looking up. It was as close to "please stay" as a man like him could come, and they both knew it, and neither named it. Hattie picked up her basket. The dead oak leaves ticked overhead the whole walk down, and for the first time in a long while she was not counting the miles. She was counting head of cattle against acres of grass, and the sum came out, for once, in her favor. She came back the next morning to walk the lease line, because a lease unwalked was a lease unproven, and she'd learned the hard way that a thing you don't stand on with your own 2 feet gets taken from under you. Will followed her at a distance through the switchgrass, hands in his pockets, pretending he wasn't. When she knelt to drive a stake at the creek corner, he crept close enough to hand her the mallet. "You count everything," the boy said. It came out half accusing. "You counted the fence posts. You counted the steps up the porch." "I do," Hattie said. She tamped the stake and tested it. "Counting keeps a thing honest. A fence you've counted can't lie to you about how far it goes." Will was quiet. Then, lo, the way children let out the thing they've been carrying. "My mama used to count. She counted the stairs when she carried me up. 1, 2, all the way to bed." He looked at the creek. "Pa don't count anything anymore." Hattie's hands went still on the mallet. She did not reach for him, though her whole body wanted to. He was not hers to gather up, and a woman who grabs too soon at a grieving child teaches him she's one more thing that will leave. So she only nodded, slow, and said, "Then I expect somebody in this family had better keep counting, so the numbers don't go wild." And she went back to work. And after a while, the boy sat down in the silver grass and counted her stakes out loud as she set them. 1, 2, all the way to 9. Tess kept her distance longer. She was the one who had watched a woman named Amelia grow thinner in the bed by the window until she was gone, and she had appointed herself the keeper of that window, of that house, of her father's grief. One afternoon she found Hattie at the churn that had gone sour in the corner of the kitchen, scalding it clean with water off the stove. The girl stood in the doorway with her arms crossed hard over her chest, and her voice came out thin and sharp as a splinter. "You don't have to do that," Tess said. "We were getting along fine. Nobody asked you into this house." Hattie did not look up from the churn. She did not step toward the table, nor toward the girl, nor toward the empty chair by the window that they both knew this was really about. "You're right," she said, plain and even. Nobody asked me. The churn asked me. It's gone bad, and it wanted scalding, and I was here. She set it upright to dry and wiped her red hands on her apron. I'm not here to be your mother, Tess. I wouldn't know how, and you wouldn't have me. I'm here for the grass. But while I'm standing in a kitchen with a sour churn in it, I'm going to scald the churn. That's all it is. And she gathered her things and went out to the woodpile and split a week's kindling because it needed splitting. And Tess, watching from the window that had been her mother's, could find no soft place in her to pry at, and no place either where the woman had reached for something that wasn't hers. The town got wind that the farm girl was up at the Hollis place regular, and the town, being the town, made a meal of it. At the mercantile, a woman told Hattie to her face that she'd better mind herself. A widow man's house was no place for a girl nobody else would have. Hattie set her coins on the counter, counting them out one at a time, and bought her flour and her needles and did not hurry. I'm not there for the widow man, she said mildly. I'm there for the grass, but you're kind to worry over my reputation. I didn't know I still had one worth the trouble. The woman colored. Two men by the door laughed, and this time it was not at Hattie. Elder Swain was Hollis's father, and that was the knot at the center of everything. A big man, prosperous, deacon at the Grange, the sort who confuses being obeyed with being honored. He had raised Hollis to take the foreman's chair over all the Swain land, and he had never once imagined the boy might sign a lease without his say. When Swain learned of it, he came to the ranch in his good coat and stood in the yard and said, loud enough for the children to hear, that his son had let a beggar woman with more heft than sense talk him out of good money, and that the whole county was laughing. Let them laugh, Hollis said. But Swain wasn't finished, and what he did next, he did with paper and not with words, because Swain had learned long ago that words only wound and paper can kill. He rode to the county seat and filed a petition against Hattie's claim. She had not yet proved up, had not yet lived the full term the law required to make the homestead truly hers, and Swain's petition swore she had abandoned it, that she lived now at another man's ranch, that the claim was a fiction, that the land ought to revert and be opened, where a prosperous man might file on it clean. The paper found Hattie at her own little soddy on the south quarter, delivered by a nervous clerk who wouldn't meet her eye. She read it, standing in her doorway with the wind coming across the blue stem. Abandoned. The words sat in her chest like a swallowed stone. She had not abandoned one blade of it. She had walked her line. She had driven her stakes. But the law would look at where a woman slept, and where a woman worked, and where a woman took her supper. And the law would see a beggar at a rich son's table, and the law had been known to see what Swain paid it to see. That night she spread every paper she owned across the plank table and counted them by lamplight the way she counted everything. The receipt for $300, the record of her filing, the seed she'd bought, the sod she'd broken, the well she'd dug 2 summers back. It made a case. It made a good case. But a good case needed a witness who could stand in that courtroom and swear she'd worked her land with her own hands. And every witness she had was a cross timbers man who owed Elder Swain money or favor or fear. She blew out the lamp to save the oil and sat in the dark, and the dark did not offer her a single name. Hollis rode down at dawn. He'd heard. Of course he'd heard. The county ran on other people's trouble. He came into the soddy without knocking, which he'd never done, and stood over the papers she'd left out, and read the petition with his hat still on. He filed against a woman, Hollis said, and there was something in his voice she hadn't heard before, a low, grinding note. Over grass. My father filed against a woman over grass. Over you signing without asking him, Hattie said. I'm just the paper he could reach. She began stacking her documents square. Don't put yourself between it. You've got 2 children and a name in this county, and a chair your father's saving for you. I've got a soddy and some numbers. I've been given away before, Mr. Hollis. I know how to land. He looked at her a long moment. That easy for you, is it? He said, being given away. She didn't answer that. She couldn't. Without opening a door she'd nailed shut, so she turned it aside, the way she turned everything aside, with work. But he had seen the flinch, and Hollis, for all his stone, was a man who noticed a flinch. He set his hat on her table, which is a thing a man does when he means to stay a while, and he said, "Show me the well you dug. If I'm to swear to your labor, I'll swear to what I've seen with my own 2 eyes, and not a word more." These stories are made with love, and I know your time is a thing you could spend anywhere. If Hattie's Road is one you want to keep walking with me, subscribe, and stay by the fire a while longer. Now, let me tell you what Hollis found at the well. He found a shaft dug straight and cased in stone, dug by a woman alone over the back half of a summer, and he stood at the lip of it a long time without speaking. Then he walked her whole quarter, every stake, and at the creek corner he found the mallet Will had handed her, and he understood, without being told, that his boy had been down here, that his boy had been counting stakes in the sun while his father sat in a dark house. Something moved across Hollis's face that was not about the land at all. That evening he did the thing he had not done in 2 years. He took Hattie and both children up the low rise behind the ranch house to where a single stone stood in the little blue stem, and he stood at the foot of it with his hat in his hands. He had not brought a soul here since the burying. Tess went white and gripped Hattie's sleeve without meaning to, the first time the girl had touched her. Her name was Amelia, Hollis said. The wind took it and gave it back. I've not said it out loud since we put her here. I got to where I thought, if I never said it, it couldn't be true. He looked at the stone, then at Hattie, then at his children. That was a coward's arithmetic. You can't unmake a thing by refusing to count it. Hattie stood very still. "No," she said softly, "you can't. But you can't lose her by saying her name either. She's not in the word. She's in the boy counting stairs and the girl guarding a window." She looked at Tess, who was crying without sound. "You've been keeping her all this time, both of you. That's not a thing to be ashamed of. That's just love with nowhere to sit down." Will slipped his hand into Hattie's. She let him. She did not close her fingers hard, only enough that he'd know she felt it. And the 4 of them stood on the rise until the light went, and nobody counted anything, and for once the not counting was all right. It was after that the thing between Hattie and Hollis began to warm, though neither of them would say a word to name it. It came out in small change, the way real things do. One evening she worked the far side of the lease till the light failed, and when she turned for home there was the good lamp burning in the barn window, set square on the sill to throw its glow across her path. She looked up. Hollis stood just inside, a curry comb in his hand, working at a horse that was already brushed smooth. Their eyes held one breath, maybe 2. Then he bent back to the animal, and she went on down the road by his light, and neither of them said a word about the lamp. Then, or ever, she paid him back in her own coin, mending the children's things without being asked. A torn shirt, a gapped sock, folded back into the drawer so quiet nobody caught her at it. Kindness passed between them like contraband, handed off in the dark where the town couldn't tax it. One evening she stayed to supper because Tess asked her to, actually asked, in a rush, staring at her plate. Afterward, Hollis walked Hattie to the edge of the yard where her road began, and they stood in the smell of turned earth and coming rain, and the space between them got small and warm and dangerous. He looked at her mouth. She saw him look, and then he took a half step back and put his stone face on again like a coat against cold. "You ought to go on," he said rough, "before the town makes a story of it." "The town's already made its story," Hattie said. "I've read it. I'm the girl nobody wanted, warming a dead woman's chair." She said it without pity, flat as a ledger line. "It doesn't cost me anything anymore, Mr. Hollis. It stopped costing me a long time ago." But it did cost her, and he heard the lie in it, the small, brave lie, and he hated that he'd made her say it. He wanted to reach for her. He'd wanted to for weeks. But he'd loved a woman into the ground once, and the wanting frightened him. And so he did the cruelest kind thing a careful man can do. He said nothing, and let her walk home alone, under the oaks that wouldn't let their dead leaves fall. The whole way down the road, she pressed her thumb against a bent nail she'd carried in her pocket since the day she met Will. The nail he'd been digging the knothole with, the one he'd left behind on the porch. She'd meant to give it back. She hadn't. A bent nail was a useless thing, too crooked to drive, and yet she'd kept it, and she couldn't have told you why. except that the boy's hand had held it. And some things you keep are not kept because they're worth keeping. They're kept because keeping them is the only way you have to say a thing you can't say out loud. The hearing was set for the first week the court sat in Cross Timbers. Hattie spent the days before it the only way she knew, working. Because a body that's working can't be a body that's drowning. She hauled water. She turned her early garden. She counted her seed twice. And she went twice to men she'd hoped might witness for her. And twice she watched a decent man look at his boots and say he couldn't afford to cross Elder Swain. Not with a note due at the bank Swain half owned. She didn't blame them. That was the trouble with Swain's kind of power. It never had to raise its voice. It just stood in every room, quietly, being owed. The night before the hearing, she was at the Hollis place, returning a mended coat, when she heard the voices through the ranch house wall. She'd only meant to leave the coat on the porch, but the window was cracked to the spring air, and Swain's voice came through it hard and certain, and she stood on the third board that always groaned, and did not dare shift her weight to make it groan again. "You will not stand up in that court," Swain was saying. "You will not testify for her against your own blood. I have got that foreman's chair waiting on you, the whole of it, the land and the name, and every acre your grandfather broke. You throw that away for a beggar woman, and you throw away what you are. Choose, the Swain name, or that girl's dirt farm. You can't hold both." There was a silence so long Hattie stopped breathing inside it. Then Hollis's voice came, low and even, with no heat in it at all, which was somehow worse than shouting. "I've spent my whole life doing what you called honor," Hollis said, "and I've come to see it was only ever obedience with a better coat on. You want me to choose? All right, I choose the truth of what I've seen with my own eyes. She dug that well. She drove those stakes. She's worked that land harder than any man you've got, and I'll say so in front of God and the county and you." A pause. "Keep your chair. I've watched what sitting in it did to you." Hattie did not hear the rest. She was already walking, the mended coat still folded over her arm, down the north road in the dark, and her chest was a fist. He'd done it. He'd thrown it all away, the land and the name and the life he'd been raised to, and he'd done it standing up for her dirt and her grass and her stakes. And instead of joy, what rose in her was the old drowning thing, the oldest thing she carried, older than Swain, older than the town's laughter. Because she knew, none better, what it was to be the cost. She had been the cost once before. She had lain sick in a good house, with a good husband, who was never once cruel to her, not in a way that left a mark, and she had watched him take her duties from her one at a time, gentle as you please. First, the accounts, then a secretary hired to do the work her hands used to do, then the letter she found half-written to his sister, arranging for the sister to take her in, arranging for her to be moved along like furniture that no longer suited the room. And when at last he'd said the words, the only words, "You're not well," she had answered him, "You're right, I'm not." And she had walked out of that house at 6 o'clock in the morning, with the sun not yet up, and she had never once let herself be a cost to anyone again. She could not do it to Hollis. She would not be the price a man paid and came to resent, the way she'd been sure her husband would have come to resent her if she'd stayed to be nursed. So she did the thing her whole ruined pride demanded. She sat down at her plank table before the sun, and she wrote, in her square, honest hand, a paper releasing Hollis Swain from the grazing lease, no penalty, no obligation, and a second line withdrawing her request that he witness at the hearing. She would let the claim go. She would let it all go before she let herself be the thing that cost him everything. He found her at first light with the papers in her hand, because he'd come to walk her to the courthouse and found her dressed to leave in the other direction. He read what she'd written. His face went hard, then went to something else, something she'd never seen on him. "You're releasing me," he said. "I'm sparing you," she said. "It's not the same, and it's not different. Your father's right about one thing, Hollis. You can't hold both, and I won't be the thing that cost you everything. I've been that. I know what it makes a person into, being nursed and carried and resented. I won't be carried. I'd rather lose the land clean than be a debt walking around in your house." Her Her voice cracked once, and she pressed it flat. "Let me go. I know how to be let go. It's the one thing I'm truly good at." He was quiet. Then he set the release papers down on the table, and he did something she did not expect. He didn't argue. He didn't grab her arm or make speeches. He just pulled out the chair across from her, the plain one, and he sat down in it, slow, like a man settling something in himself for good. "Sit down, Hattie," he said. "Hollis, you've been standing since I met you," he said. "Standing to be laughed at, standing to prove your figures, standing so nobody can say you asked to sit. I watched my father teach a whole family that a chair had to be earned. That love was a wage you drew for good behavior, and the day you couldn't work, you'd best pack." He looked at her steady. Amelia thought that. At the end, she kept saying she was sorry she was a burden. Sorry, sorry, and I never once knew how to tell her she had it wrong, and she died still thinking she'd cost me something. "I won't do that twice. You didn't cost me the chair. I stood up out of it myself, because it was a bad chair, and I'd rather stand next to you than sit in it alone." Hattie's hands were shaking. She looked at the release papers, at her own square handwriting saying, "Let me go." "You don't understand," she whispered. "You have to earn your place. You have to be worth the trouble, or they move you along. That's how it's always." "No," Hollis said, and it wasn't loud, but it stopped her. "You don't have to earn the chair. You just have to sit in it." He pushed the plain chair out from the table with his boot, an inch, then another. "Sit down. Not because you dug a well or squared a ledger or fooled my father's man on the price of grass. Because you're here, and I want you here, and that's the whole of it, and there's nothing under it to prove." She sat. She hadn't decided to. Her body did it before her pride could stop it, and once she was in the chair, the thing she'd held for 2 years came up out of her, in a great silent shudder. No sound to it, just her broad shoulders shaking, and her face in her rough hands. And Hollis did not reach across to fix it. He let her have it. He only reached out and set the bent nail on the table between them. The boy's crooked, useless nail, which she'd left in her coat, and he'd found and known at once what it was. They went to the courthouse together, and half of Cross Timbers came to watch the girl lose her farm. Swain sat in front in his good coat, sure as scripture. The clerk read the petition, abandoned, and then Hollis stood, and in front of the county and his father he swore to the well and the stakes and the broken sod. Swore he'd seen her work that land raw-handed while lesser men slept. And when Swain's lawyer tried to make the widow man's testimony into a scandal, Hollis said only, "You can call it what you like. I'm telling you what I saw." The room murmured. The judge wrote. Then a small voice said, "I want to say something." It was Tess. She had come without anyone knowing, in her Sunday dress, and she stood up on the bench so the judge could see her, and her chin was up the way her mother's used to be. "She counts our stairs now," the girl said, clear as a bell in that stunned room. 1, 2, all the way to bed, like Mama did. She didn't take Mama's place. She made the house so we could bear to be in it again. The girl looked straight at her grandfather. "You said she was worthless. She's the worthiest person I know." The room was so quiet you could hear the courthouse clock, and Elder Swain, who had never in his life been made small by anything, sat with the child's words on him, and something in the old man broke that had needed breaking for 40 years. He got heavily to his feet. His lawyer put a hand out to stop him. He shook it off. "Withdraw the petition," Swain said. His voice was not the same voice. "I'll say it plain. Since the child's shamed me into honesty, and God knows nothing else would, I filed on that land to punish my son for choosing rightly, and I called that woman worthless because it frightened me that she wasn't. She dug a well I'd have hired 10 men for. She counted a price my own man couldn't better. I've spent my life believing a person's worth is a thing they earn and can lose, and I made my boy believe it. And it cost me his mother, and near cost me him." He looked at Hattie, and it was the hardest thing she ever watched a proud man do. "You're worth more than the land, girl. I'm sorry I needed a child to teach me my own arithmetic. Withdraw it." The petition was struck, the claim held. Hattie stood in the courtroom that had come to laugh at her, and did not fully understand. for a long moment, that she had won, because winning was a thing she had no practice at. Then Will came barreling down the aisle and hit her legs at a dead run, and wrapped both arms around as much of her as he could reach, and she put her hand on his hair, and the understanding came in slow, like warmth into cold fingers. They were married that summer at the little rise where Amelia lay, because Hollis said she ought to be there for it, being family, and Hattie loved him the more for saying so. It was a small thing, a preacher and the 2 children, and old Swain standing off to the side, learning how to be near people he'd only ever ruled. There was no grand vow. Hollis was not a man for speeches, and Hattie had spent her life being counted and found short, and neither of them needed the words to be many. They needed them to be true. The little blue stem ran silver down the whole south quarter that day, waist high just as she'd promised his cattle it would be, and up along the fence the blackjack oaks had finally, in their own slow time, let their dead leaves go, and stood out new and green, the way a thing does when at last it's ready, and not one day before. Will carried the ring to them on a scrap of ribbon, and nodded to that same ribbon, because the boy had insisted, was a bent nail, too crooked ever to drive, kept for no good reason at all except that a hand had held it and been loved. Hattie kept the ledgers after that, and the town got used to the sight of her, and in time forgot it had ever laughed. But she never forgot the lesson she'd walked into that marriage still needing, the one Tess had spoken, and Swain had wept, and Hollis had said plainest of all, an inch of pushed-out chair between them. Worth is not a wage you draw for being useful, nor a debt you pay down with good behavior, to be foreclosed the day you fall ill. It is not earned, and so it cannot be lost. It simply is, the way the grass is, the way a bent and useless nail can be the most precious thing in a house. She had spent her whole life trying to be worth keeping, and all along she learned she had only ever needed to sit down in the chair that had been hers from the start. These stories are made with love. If this one stayed with you, subscribe, and sit a while by the fire with me again. That is all I ask.